Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allow me to start first with a question. How many of you all does not have an iPad, a phone, a device, a wearable, a watch that is basically connected? Zero. How many have two devices? Well, it's about 30-40% of everybody. So your threat landscape is, as a matter of fact, increased potentially, exponentially compared to others. Today we live in a world that is continuously changing to things that are supposed to be better, supposed to be easier for us all, and that's what we are actually aiming at. Let me take you into a journey of the past and then the present, and we'll see where we're going into the cyber domain. And that will really get you and pick your minds in some of those points of interest that we see today in daily life. The first generation, industrial generation that we had, with many of those, again, machines that created first time that thought to be taking people's job, really evolved into a fourth generation of such industries, such machines, that is not only will take people's job, but will enhance their lifestyle, will enhance many of the health service, healthcare, education, transportation, oil and gas, many of those sectors. And that's what we are actually seeing today. That's what we are living on today. And that's, we don't want to go back to history and see what used to be. An example of that, we used to communicate using a whole big machines that is actually doing many of those connectivities here and there, wired, with no wireless. We used to communicate using fire when the tribes doesn't have any connections here and there. They used to communicate using pigeons, in that perspective, sending letters or communication messages here and there. Today we communicate using cloud. All of our information in that WhatsApp cloud, Apple cloud, social media, TikTok, as anybody here is using TikTok? Sure, everybody as well having a presence in the social media. With that social media, as well as many of those connectivities, that's what we are actually living at today. And this is, if we compare ourselves to our kids, they are far away from where we are. And we call them addicted to those devices. The other day I asked my son, he was playing actually, I entered the house, he was playing his Xbox as well as PUBG, Fortnite. And I asked him, sorry, get a life. Go get a life. The simple answer, he actually answered me, sorry, Daddy, but you're addicted to your device, since I'm all the time on my devices, the three of them. And he said, you telling me, you're lecturing me? First, you need to set a model for us in order to actually follow that model. They don't understand it's work, it's 24/7, it's cyber attacks here and there. So it is very important to actually set those momentum with the kids, especially with this generation that has artificial intelligence, that has Internet of Things, that has cloud computing, that has blockchain, that has cryptocurrencies, a lifestyle that we never actually had faced previously. And guess what? This is the future where it will actually take us and continuing taking us throughout all of our journeys. And living in that metaverse will allow us actually to experience new threats, security threats, which dictate to us as well the need of the new future policing, future actual understanding of all of these aspects that we are at. Data, as we all say and everybody says, is the next oil. Yes, it is the next oil, but sorry, at least the oil stabilized many of those economies. At least the oil did create many of those jobs. Let's make sure that data does the same. And dependency on these technologies will allow us to actually create more and more data. Today in this room, for example, with all of those, if you get a sniffer, if you get an IMSI capture, if you get any of those devices that collects all of this data here, it's a huge, tremendous size of data that needs to be analyzed afterwards and allows many people to actually do many of those aspects. Imagine if it's not this class. Imagine it's the city, smart city. Imagine it's the nation, smart nation. And this is where our future is. The leadership here in UAE have set a goal. We are moving towards an artificial intelligent government. Artificial intelligence that allows us to use so much technologies to make it easy for the people, for the education, for the new generation, for the youngsters, for the elders, for many of those aspects, and allow them to use that technology for the best, not only a user, but also a developer, a creator, an innovator of many of those technologies. And that's what we are trying to build those safe cities at. And that's our goal, creating many of those safe cities and allow many of that smart cities to be safe, smart nations. In those cities, like any of those other cities, there is always huge dependency on technology. And as mentioned, the more dependent we are on technology, the more vulnerable, the huger threat landscape that we might face. And that landscapes from many threats that we face in a regular lifestyle, we can face it online, but with style, with different style, with different anomalies that we don't see usually in here. And those needs to be actually controlled, or at least policed, or secured in a way that doesn't impact our life, our lifestyle, our essence that we actually build in here when building that educational system, when building that ecosystems allows everybody to really help each other. Cyber attackers or cyber threats in general varies, and we generalize it in different aspects, but to summarize, there is cybercrime, there is cyber terrorism, and there is cyber warfare. And the people behind that, there is state, non-state actors, there is hackers, there is activists, there's cryptids, there's many of those entities who are actually basically living in that smart city and just waiting for something to happen, or if they are not already actually hacked our phone. We just heard one of the devices here talking by itself, or even flashing by itself and doing this or that, okay, and collecting data in that perspective. And this is where we need to really build many of those aspects to us. There is as well the insider threats. There is as well the companies who could be great in defending, but as well other companies who could be great in spying and attacking and doing many of this and creating this blue team and red team, basically ecosystems as well in this perspective. 3 examples I want to emphasize on to give you and to put this in context. In a daily basis, we investigate cases. We follow up with many of those crimes across the whole nation. And those crimes varies between simple crimes all the way to a nation-state type of crimes. One example where we had a poor kid who was bullied using many of those cyber social media perspective to the level that he was about to commit suicide, to a level where his grades were really, after being a student, really impacted him and his family and his basically friends around him in that perspective, and allows him to really become basically sick. And that's what really impacted us. If these technologies could really affect that poor kid to a level that allows him to impact his life, his family's life, there need to be something basically done in that perspective. And that kid, alhamdulillah, with many of the support, with the families, with the healthcare, many of those aspects allows us to bring him back to many of those aspects. That's the community we're talking about. That's the pillars of our society. Then we go into those small and medium businesses, companies, who as well collect many data of people. But guess what? One of the other cases we investigated that they were hit with a ransomware. All of their systems were locked. A price of about 3 million dirham were requested. And a triple extortion was actually done in that perspective. Not only to the company, but also to the victims themselves and to the shareholders of that company, which allows this to be really, again, an organized crime done by many of those. And guess what? The way that payment is done is not only in the cryptocurrency that we hear about, Bitcoins, which, by the way, everybody now is following and controlled in some ways, but in different Bitcoins that are nobody heard of, new ones that was created only for that specific, basically, crime. And this is what we usually investigate with many of the partners that we have in that perspective. There is also the story of the APTs, Advanced Persistent Threats, that they are already in our system, that they are already reaching and spying and getting many of those data that are considered to be top secret or secret. We heard many incidents of that, all the way from 2007 in Stucknext, or even Estonia attack, or Georgia 2008, or even Shamon in 2012. Many of those attacks built on such APTs type of aspects. And cyber terrorism is based on many of those as well. There are states, there are non-state actors who are actually leveraging these technologies that depend on our life and using it for the bad, to collect information, again, to build as well patterns of many of those things and leverage all of those technologies that they have. And guess what? All of this is done in an automated manner. AI does this for you. You don't need to actually be a programmer here or be a specialist here. There are tools that allows you to do many of those aspects easily. And the sophistication of that, if we're talking 2008, 2007, again, Stucknext that penetrated a nuclear facility that is closed network. Imagine today what can be done in many of the technologies and advanced that we have in that perspective. The impact is huge, not only on the society, not only in the national security, but also on the economies of many of those small and medium businesses that we see. And this is where we are aiming towards actually building many of those safe economy. We're bringing and trying to bring many of those country or companies in our country. However, where is the assurance that there will not be an attack that penetrates many of these aspects? And this what would take us to, again, UAE, where we at. UAE, and God bless our leadership, who had that vision of moving towards that digitized artificial intelligence country or nation. Not only to help our nation, but also to export that across all of our region. And this is where the UAE have shifted into many of those aspects. The main milestones across this timeline is when an introduction of an e-government started long time ago. And add to that, when the leadership has set goals, as they usually do, to move from that e-government to that smart government, to that mobile government, to that artificial intelligent government. And that's what we are at now, trying to develop and grab as much people as possible, as much talents as possible to create that artificial intelligence and really build that community in a safe and secure heaven. And the way we did that, as a matter of fact, there is an initiative created across the whole community. We called it Cyber Pulse. The Cyber Pulse is similar to any pulse that goes into our life, into our systems. And we realized the importance of this, as a matter of fact, after or during the pandemic. where not only we get used to wear masks whenever we get outside, where not only we ensure that social distancing, that sanitizing, we build that culture together and allows us to really be safe together. Because one incident could really impact the whole society. And that's the goal of CyberPulse. If we can take that into a culture that we live in, and if we can take that to be our daily lifestyle, before clicking in any of those links, before opening in any of those emails that could be phishing email, before actually using a USB that could actually affect or impact our systems, we need to think it twice. We don't want it to be a wake-up call to us all. We want to build that culture of cybersecurity, a pulse that goes into our systems and allows us to actually build that momentum, that lifestyle. And this is where we are aiming toward actually leveraging that towards that cyber resilience. A resiliency, platforms, systems, ecosystems that allows us to all together participate and contribute in this, from those new generations all the way to those CEOs, TXOs, leaders. And this is what we have already introduced in that CyberPulse, an initiative that is actually going across many of that and with the collaboration with many partners. One of them is the United Nations, ITU, International Telecommunication Union, where we take that same initiative and apply it into countries around us, where the attacks are coming to us from. And that's what we actually realize. Cyber crimes, cyber terrorism, cyber warfare, it is not a one nation's threat or a one nation's or even a one company's concern. It is a collaborative effort. It is everybody's concerns, and that's what we are actually aiming in order to build and gather to build that safe and secure city. And that's the ideas worth sharing with you all, and that's what we need to actually send that message to all of us. Thank you very much, and appreciate you. Thank you.